Hey everybody, welcome back to Alum House Sound. My name is Dave, and today I want to give you a little bit about my story of music and how I got to where I am right now that you're actually watching my video. So let's roll the intro clip and then we'll dive into the discussion. All right, well, welcome to Alum House Sound. My name is Dave, and I'm a musician, I'm a sound engineer, and clearly I put information up on YouTube as well. And one of the things that I get questioned about often is, how did you get to where you are now? So I want to give you a little bit of background about myself and then what I did to practice mixing, because I had a young sound engineer recently reach out and say, Dave, I want to get better at mixing. How do I get better? So a little bit of background for me. My music journey started out when I was in third grade. I started playing the trumpet. My dad played baritone, which is kind of like a small tuba, but sounds kind of like a trombone. And I looked at it and I said, I want to play that. And it was the size of me at the time. And so they said, yeah, try this. So they handed me a trumpet. And they said, here, give this a shot. And so from third grade on, I've been playing the trumpet. I played all through grade school, through middle school, high school. I did all county, all district band. I played in some college bands, even as a high schooler. And I studied the trumpet. I practiced day in, day out, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day while I was taking private lessons. Obviously, when you get into high school and you're doing marching band and concert band and jazz band and all of the things, you're just playing probably 3 hours a day, which was great. When I got out of high school, I ended up getting a gig in a disco band. I toured in a band called Groove Spot. If you look up on YouTube, you may be able to find some videos of me in a plum leisure suit for some promotional videos back from 1998. And I did that for about a year and a half, and I loved it. Toured all up and down the East Coast of the United States, and we just played. I was the youngest guy in the band, and we played, and we had a blast. So I studied trumpet like a musician. I worked on scales, I worked on everything all the time, the basics. The basics every day was just playing real good attacks, real good lip slurs, working on breath control, finger control, and scales. Now maybe trumpet's not your instrument. Maybe you're a guitarist, maybe you're a drummer, maybe you're a vocalist. All of those things I ended up teaching myself. In middle school, I learned how to play guitar. I picked up my mom's acoustic guitar, and she had a John Denver book. And so the first song I learned how to play was Take Me Home, Country Road. And I knew the melody, and so I would kind of learn to play the chords because it had the block chords above it. So I would play a G and then a D and a C, and I taught myself how to play basic chords. And then ended up in high school later on. I learned how to play drum set. I was actually beatboxing to start out with. I was into car stereos. And car stereos led me into kind of the audio realm of like frequency discussions. So learning what the sub frequencies were versus the high frequencies. And in higher end car stereo competitions, there's usually two things they're doing. One is SPL. So I learned real quick about decibel levels. And then the second thing they do is sound quality, or SQ. And so that's talking about kind of how to build a car stereo that's flat response, and you're looking for kind of pink noise, white noise, things like that. So I got a little bit of that history or that information in the car stereo realm. Anyway, we fast forward. Now I'm drumming a bunch. I actually play drums more than I play trumpet, unfortunately. I still keep my piccolo trumpet out. I try to blow notes on this. This is my favorite horn of all, and it plays the least amount of music for me ever, but I keep it out in my studio, in my office, because I love to play it. Anytime I just get to pick up the horn, I just blow a couple notes on it. It makes me happy. Right over to the side over here is actually my drum set, because I'm usually practicing that and learning things. And so the reason I tell you this history about where my musical journey started is because when we get into sound engineering and mix engineering, a lot of us have come into it for various different reasons. So because I work with a lot of churches, a lot of times a church has always had a soundboard, many years I should say, has had a soundboard, and it's not digital and full production like it is right now. It used to be an analog console, maybe about 8, 12, or they had the typical Mackie 24-channel mixer that somebody installed. They had some amplifiers and some speakers, maybe a monitor, and the whole goal was its true nature of a PA, a public address is what that stands for, the PA. And so you have a microphone that goes into the soundboard, a couple knobs you can twist for gain and EQ, you got a fader up and down, and then you've got it going out to some amplifiers and speakers. And that's your real simple PA. Well, as they expanded the piano, they would put the piano in there. Well, they only needed to make the choir because the piano in the room was already being heard. Maybe they had an organ, and you just needed the lectern mic, which is the mic typically used for speaking into your sermon or announcements, if you will. And so you have organ, and then you have this group and that group. Well, eventually, now we're at the point where we have a full band, and we have very little stage volume coming from natural instruments unless it's an amplifier or an acoustic guitar. And now we're trying to mix kind of rock band sound. But in the early days, whoever it was that was most comfortable and not scared of the soundboard became the sound guy. Maybe that's you. Maybe you walked in 25 years ago and you had the IT background, meaning you did something with a computer, and you came in and they said, hey, we need a sound technician. And you said, okay, what does that mean? And they pointed you at this soundboard and they showed you how to turn it on and how to unmute things. And you're used to processes. It's a normal thing for you. And so you were like, I can follow these processes. Sure, I'll do that. Well, then you came in 2 weeks in a row. And because you came in 2 weeks in a row, it was kind of your unpaid job. So now anytime you showed up, it was like, oh, well, he's here or she's here. You know how to run this stuff. Great. We don't have to do it. The second way that people get pulled into, voluntold, maybe you show up as the sound person, is usually you've got a little bit of experience. Maybe you dabbled into recording at home. Maybe you are a musician and you've learned how to record yourself into a 2-channel interface. Maybe like a small, I've got an audio box USB by Presonus, maybe it's a Focusrite, whatever it is. Maybe you've gained something in your history where you had a microphone in front of you and you were recording that. Maybe you were recording a piano or guitar thing, and you put it into a computer, into a digital audio workstation that we call a DAW. And maybe you started dabbling in that little bit of mixing there and you got comfortable with it. Maybe you're a DJ and you're used to having the 1 and the 2 with the records, or nowadays it's just MP3s, but you've got a fader that you move back and forth. Maybe you were messing with tempo. Whatever the case is, you have shown up and to your venue and you've become the sound tech. And so now, on a consistent basis, you're arriving, you're helping build a mix, you're maybe offering suggestions. And what I want to talk about now is how do we go from what we're doing to the next level? And this is based on what I did to go from my knowledge of where I was into the next level. So how do you approach sound engineering like a musician? Well, in the digital realm, I had already been recording in a DAW at my house. I had been working with an interface. When I was at that church previously, I was recording myself singing and playing guitar through my 2-channel USB interface into my DAW, and I would mix myself every week, just to give my musicians and my choir something to learn their parts from and a practice tool. So that was a challenge for me, was record myself. I went through college as a trumpet player, hitting the record button on a tape player that had a little tape in it and this little tiny microphone. Always sounded horrible, tinny and thin. And I figured if I paid thousands of dollars for college, and I'm playing into a small tape microphone, then if I can record myself in a DAW and produce it with a little bit of reverb and a little bit of EQ, maybe it'd be even better. So I wanted to expand into this. So what I did is my church had 4 different bands that rotated and played once a month, and 4 different sound technicians typically. And so I came in and I slapped my laptop onto the console. We had the Behringer console at that point. Hit record every week, and I got multi-tracks. And here's what I did. Don't miss this. I went home and I gave myself 4 hours every week. I didn't care how I split it up. I could do an hour at a time. I could do 30-minute sections, but I gave myself 4 hours a week to practice mixing in the DAW. So I took the raw tracks and I went home and I listened to the kick drum and I put EQ and compressor on it, and I listened to the snare drum, EQ and compressor, and I worked on refining those sounds, and then I built the mix. And in the DAW I used automation, if that's just kind of automating volume levels. So if a vocal needed to be louder here but then softer here, I could automate those changes. I added reverb and delay, but after that 4-hour time frame, I said, I'm done, and I had to mix it down or hit the render button, if you will, and get it to an MP3. And then comes the scary part. I sent those out to the band and said, hey, here's kind of a reference of what you sounded like this past week. So for the band, it's very akin to me playing trumpet into a recorder. They get to hear a recording of themselves, because when you're on stage, it sounds completely different. Now, I know everybody live streams. Okay, most everybody live streams. But at this point now, we weren't live streaming. This is 7 years ago, 8 years ago. We didn't live stream. But I challenged myself to practice. I did this every week, 4 hours a week for a year and a half. 18 months, give or take a week here or there, but for a year and a half, I went ahead and recorded myself, built mixes, and then sent that out to the band. Now imagine the growth if you spent 1 extra hour a week, let alone 2, 3, or 4 hours a week mixing. Now, obviously, it's not on this console or this console. You're not at your church's venue mixing, but you can take multi-tracks home. And what I started out with, I started with some basic iPhone earbuds plugged into my computer. It didn't need studio monitors. I didn't need big fancy stuff. I literally just plugged in my laptop, I hit record, and then I went home, plugged in my headphones, my earbuds, and I started mixing. Now, as I got better, I got nicer headphones, I got more involved and more kind of committed to it. And that's where my true love for mixing came in, was challenging myself to learn the craft and get better. Now, at the beginning of 2023, this year that I'm in right now, I put up this post here, and this post was, how are you going to get better this year? What's your plan? And this is what I challenge everybody. Take a laptop. You don't need a fancy laptop. The laptop that I started with was an i5 processor with 8 gigabytes of RAM. Now that's laughable in today's age, but that was my main work machine back then, and I had a DAW on it, so I went and plugged it in, and it recorded really well. It worked. And then when I got home, I could plug it in, and I used stock plugins. I didn't buy a bunch of Waves plugins or Ozone or any of that stuff. I just used stock plugins, and I learned how to use a stock compressor, stock EQ, stock limiter, all of those tools that were right in the DAW, and I was able to build some decent mixes. I didn't need fancy tools, because in the end, compression, EQ, and limiting, that's really all you need. Maybe a little reverb, touch of delay. And so I learned those things along the way. But that's how I took myself from a musician's background, applied those concepts and techniques into the sound engineering realm, and was able to get myself to a point where I felt confident talking to other people about it. So then during the pandemic, the 2020 years, we had a lot of people learning how to live stream, and I started answering questions that I saw on Facebook groups and other forums through video. And a lot of you all have stuck around since those days. You found me then. Maybe you're newer to the channel and you're just experimenting and experiencing what we've got here at Alum House. But the goal was to share this technology. I started going around actually prior to 2020 with local churches around me and doing training sessions. And I would sit down with their tech team and their worship team, and not their lighting guys, because at that point, while I understood lights, I'm not a lighting master. And while I understood cameras, I only really knew how to turn them on, and that was about it. But sound and worship leading, I had led worship, I've played trumpet on stage, I've been a guitarist on stage, I've played bass on stage, played drums on stage, and been a sound engineer. I had a lot of experience with bridging the gap between the stage and the tech team. And so I love getting together with church groups, church worship teams and experience teams, and helping them to bridge that gap and learn together. That came across as soon as I was able to post a video and had a lot of good response to it, a couple thousand views within a week. And I was like, okay, there's some appetite for this. So Alum House Sound has just kind of created a place where we can share some information, share the learnings and experiences that I've had, and get that to you. So as we wrap this video up, that's a little bit of my experience. Hopefully you can find some challenges and some tips in there, and you can start to take your mixing to the next level. If you have questions about how to do that, I've got plenty of videos that I can just share with you. I'll put a couple of those down in the description as resources that are quickly available, maybe how to multi-track record and how to start building a mix at home and practicing at home. I've got a playlist for that. Also, if you've got questions and comments, leave those down in the description. And if you want to start a conversation outside of YouTube, you can go to my website, which that'll be linked below as well. And you can fill out the contact card and we can start a conversation outside of YouTube and get you some help there. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. We'll catch you guys in that next video. Peace.